Boys and girls, I just want you to see how much of Apothecary we have left. Getting through it so fast. Anyway, today I want to share with you, apparently a dog. Who knew? Chapter 32, it's called Genie. And once again, it started to rain while I was out on my dog's walk. I'm not sure if I still live in California or not anymore, but perfect for this story. Today I wanted to talk about how readers generalize. So, I make all kinds of connections in my head when I read. And one thing I noticed was I found this statement from actually, the Count Villi made this statement. Whenever we tamper with natural laws, there are consequences. And this was on page 286. And I quoted it is because I lifted it exactly from the text, okay? And the reason I did is I realized, I was like, I've heard something similar. Where have I heard it? And then I thought, wait a minute. For every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. Laws of motion. I was like, but well, I can't quite remember all the details, so I Googled it, of course. And it's Isaac Newton's laws of motion that I was thinking of. And I love when fiction goes into kind of imitating some real life laws, ideas, concepts, because it kind of opens your mind or gives you some schema for next time you encounter it. So just check out what you notice about their scientific concepts in here, and if they have any bearing to some real scientific concepts you understand, generalize, enrich your ideas. With that knowledge, can you see where the author thinks that the experience is going to go? What might happen? Can you make a more accurate prediction? When we generalize from ideas and concepts that the author gives us and hints, we can get a richer understanding of our text. So that's what we're going to do today in our heads as I read Chapter 32, Genie. Dawn broke clear and cold over the North Sea, and the red Anakin plowed steadily northeast. Through the waves, seagulls flew overhead, calling, and two fought over a fish in midair, wheeling and turning on each other. The light shimmering on the water was so bright it made me blink. A man took sun sightings with a sextant at noon to determine our position, and studied charts trying to keep us from straying permanently into Russian waters. An albatross soared in our wake. I had come to look at birds in a new, suspicious light in the past few days, but this one seemed genuinely like a bird. Okay, that's an awesome little statement on Janie's part. It wheeled in our slipstream as if for the pleasure of it, making endless, effortless figures, eights in its vast wings. I want you to think about the word slipstream. Do you know exactly what that means? Should you look it up? Jinlo showed me a vial she had brought to be used if we were stranded at sea. She dipped a cotton thread into the clear liquid and lowered it, wet, into a beaker of seawater. Salt crystals began to form on the treated thread and grew until they looked like a piece of rock candy hanging in the water. Jinlo pulled out the hardened salt and handed me the beaker of water. Drink, she said. It's safe? No, I poison you. I smiled, used to Jinlo's sense of humor by now, and drank the water. It was cold and tasted clean and silvery, but not salty. People could use that, I said, excited, all over the world. Jinlo frowned. Is new, difficult to make more than a small amount. In the afternoon, we watched her send her particles up into the air so she could practice with her net. Count Villi explained that large amounts of radiation were required to make the net contract sharply, so the low levels of radiation from the sun just made it hang like gossamer in the light. It was barely visible, but cast a golden shimmer against the sky. The crew of the former Kong Olaf, who knew a good fishing net when they saw one, asked Jinlo to try to snare some fresh fish. This is not purpose of net, she said. Just try, begged Ludovic. Jinlo sighed. Okay. She said, you find fish. So the men scanned the surface of the water intently until they saw herring gulls feeding in the distance. There'll be a school right there, Ludwig said. The birds always find them. They steered the Anakin toward the gulls and stopped the boat. Below the birds, we saw small baitfish leaping from the water in silver showers, trying to escape the larger fish below. The big ones flipped at the surface and sometimes cleared it, and meanwhile, the gulls went crazy trying to snatch the flying baitfish. Jinlo, unmoved by the spectacle, showed two of the men how to hold the net's nearly invisible golden edges together. They swung it out over the sea, where it fell like a light rain on the surface of the water. After a few tries, they gathered it in, full of fat, shining fish, which flipped and wriggled on the deck. The cook prepared the fish on an open grill on the deck, grumbling about how Benjamin's father had taken over his galley as a laboratory. The apothecary had extracted the quintessence from the preserved flowers in the glass bell, but he was still experimenting with it. Thinking about how intently he concentrated on his work made me think about my own parents and how soon they'd be back in London to discover I was missing and what they might do. When the fish came off the grill, hot and salty and delicious, Count Willy and Benjamin and I took our plates to sit on the storage bin. The brief noonday sun was out, and the Count held up a fish by the tail, then stripped off the flesh with his teeth like a great happy cat basking in the light. I like that description of Count Willy. We keep hearing of him being compared to different things of enjoyment, opulence. And here's another one, him like a great happy sleep cat. I'd grown fond of the Count on this voyage. He was sardonic and jaded sometimes, but he was also endlessly willing to be pleased. Kings do not have finer lunches than this one, he said, licking grease off his fingers. I can promise you that. What do you know about the bomb the Soviets are testing? I asked. Only that it was designed by a physicist named Andrei Sakharov, he said. They are a young genius. I have longed to meet him under other circumstances. I think he has a very flexible mind. We thought for some time that we might win him over to our work, but I fear he's rather entrenched in the Soviet system. Maybe he'll be interested when he sees what you can do, I said. The Count gave me a wry smile. When we have sabotaged his work, I don't know how you make friends, but I don't think that's the best way. I do like the Count. I thought of something else that had been bothering me. When the apothecary made the Javiol tree bloom, I said, to harvest the quintessence, it released something he called the dark force. It was like a cloud. The Count looked startled. You saw it? We watched it float away, I said, except it didn't really float. It seemed to know where it was going. A momentary frown crossed the Count's face. Have you noticed ill effects from your experiments with the pharmacopoeia? Benjamin and I glanced at each other. You were missing the feathers round your neck, Benjamin said, when you were a bird. But that was because Mr. Danby grabbed my scarf, I said. I thought about the other things we'd done. I kicked the drain before Pip could become invisible, but that was my fault, and it ended up helping us because he was visible and could distract the police. The memory oil paralyzed Jinlo, Benjamin said. Whenever we tamper with natural laws, there are consequences. The Count said, the larger the disruption, the larger the consequence. The name of your pharmacopoeia, for example, comes from the ancient Greek pharmako, which meant both drug and poison, the power to heal and harm. I have never seen the dark force as a cloud before, but I have seen its effect in many small ways. My tutor, Constantine, compared it to the Roman idea of the genius or guardian spirit. He felt that something like those genii resided in matter and were released and disturbed when matter was transformed. It explained for him the effects of the cloud seeming to know where it was going. There is a kind of intelligence to what is released, and sometimes it is a mischievous or irritable character, but their genii have a strange kind of loyalty. The fact that they bother to tease us with ill effects means they are inextricably linked to those who disturb them. If you see what I mean, I'm not sure of any of this, of course. We work in the dark. We do what we can, as James said. Mr. Danby told me to read Henry James, I said. Ah, you see, Count Billy said. The dreadful Mr. Danby reads good books. Even the darkest forces are never all bad. Wow, Count Billy is just a font of various statements that have been said before by famous people. I think it's interesting, again, when you go back to this, to think about what he's trying to describe and explain and how that might impact our story with this evil force that might counteract the effects and it being loyal. What's being set up for us here? What's this foreshadowing? That night, Benjamin and I stood on the rail in the dark, bundled up against the cold, watching the water break and foam beneath Anakin's bow. It poured away along the sides of the hull, bright white against the black sea, as if the boat had wings. Overhead, the stars were impossibly clear, brighter than any stars in smoky England or smoggy Los Angeles, and they gave me an odd feeling, as if something was expanding inside my chest and spilling over. It would seem very unfair to be killed at 14 when the world had so much loveliness in it. Benjamin broke the silence, saying, I'm sorry I lost control yesterday, Janie. I couldn't stand it, watching Shishkin hold that gun to your head and not being able to move or do anything. It was my plan that had put you in danger, and I sort of snapped. It was a good plan, I said. I just wasn't careful enough. You were very brave to do it. I wasn't brave. I was scared to death. He believed you the whole time. Did you ever want to be an actress? I thought about the vain and silly Maid Marian, with her false eyelashes and her obvious flirting, and the other versions of her who'd been in my parents' shows back home. No, I said. I mean, I used to practice walking like Katharine Hepburn, but that was more about wanting to be the character she plays than about wanting to be her. Show me the walk, he said. I shook my head. I couldn't believe I'd told him about Hepburn's walk. Please, he said. No. Benjamin smiled. Someday? I couldn't help smiling back. Maybe. We watched the bow wave a while longer, and then Benjamin said, Listen, Janie, remember the thing I said about Sarah Pennington under the smell of truth? I nodded. My heart was pounding inside my coat. I just wanted to say, Benjamin said, staring hard down at the water, that you're the one I'd want to be here with. It was exactly the thing I might have wanted him to say, but wouldn't have dared to wish for back when I'd had time to worry about whether he liked me or not. Hearing it out loud, I didn't know how to answer. He turned to look at me, and his dark, serious eyes had the same effect on me as they had in the lunchroom that first day. The wind blew my hair against my cheek, and he pushed it away and smiled. This is what I mean by American hair, he said, tugging the strand lightly. His fingers touched my face and then slid around the back of my neck, and he pulled me in close and kissed me. His lips were warm and soft against mine, and the night air was cold. Shivers went down my spine from the place where his fingers had tangled in my hair and pressed against my skin. It felt infinitely sweet. We were on our way to a nuclear test site with an untested antidote. The Soviet Navy was looking for us in submarines, and spy planes, and my parents would be frantic with worry, but there was nowhere else I wanted to be. There is still, to this day, nowhere I would rather have had my first kiss of my life. Well, she has interesting tastes. Benjamin pulled back. His face was turbulent with emotion. He seemed to be frowning and smiling all at once. I knew he was thinking the same thing I was, and then he was kissing me again, and the world fell away. When we were too tired and cold to stay on deck, Benjamin went to his father's cabin, and I went to the one I shared with Jinlo. She opened one eye, then the other, when I came in, and I wondered if she ever truly slept. She gave me a once-over. Something good happen? She asked. I said. Yes. That's good, she said. I undressed down to my silk long johns and climbed into my little bunk, when I lay awake staring at the rivets in the cabin ceiling. Jinlo, I said after a while. Do you still miss your parents? There was a silence in the dark cabin. Sometimes, she said. Do you remember them well? There was another pause. I remember smell of father's shirt, she said, combing mother's hair. Sometimes faces not so clear. I am 8. I remember baby brother's feet, very small toes and very funny. What was his name? Shunliu, he said. It means willow tree. But he is so fat, not like willow. Maybe he would have grown up to be tall and skinny, I said. There was no answer, and I thought maybe I'd said the wrong thing. Your mother know where you are? Junlo asked finally. Your father? No. They worry. I know. You don't know, she said. You are child. I resented that for a little while, but I knew she was right. And I couldn't really imagine what they'd be going through. I tried to summon some comforting idea, but could only picture them angry and frantic, and I didn't want to think about that. I rolled back and forth on my bunk's thin pillow. My mind drifted back to the look in Benjamin's eye on deck, and his soft lips on mine, and his warm hand touching my face in the bitter cold. And finally, I fell asleep. Again, I always notice how mature Janie can be and how she assesses the whole situation. And I love the way the author gives us an opportunity to see inside her head. I hope you thought a little bit about the different rules and ideas and connections that authors try to give us and bring us through their characters that help us understand what might be coming. And I'll share chapter 33 with you next time. Remember to read and jot and try your teaching points. Bye.